Hey guys, my name is Clay. This is Life by the Bow. Today I want to give you a little walkthrough of our 23 HPS and just kind of give you a general idea of why we chose this boat kind of as our everyday boat when it comes to fishing, diving, and like going to the sandbar down here in the Keys. So first things first, to truly understand this boat, this is what I call a true bay boat. A lot of manufacturers nowadays, they're making what's called hybrid bay boats. And in my honest opinion, I kind of feel like the word hybrid and bay boat shouldn't be used in the same category. The reason why is because they're making these boats so big now to the point where they're putting twins on them. And at that point, they're basically small center consoles, but for what you're paying for, you could get a way bigger used center console, probably somewhere in the 35-foot range for the amount of money that you're gonna spend on that hybrid bay boat. Another thing to mention is those boats, you know, they're not as inshore capable as they are offshore capable, and they also have limited offshore capabilities. So that's really kind of like a misconception I really wanted to clear up. But ultimately, to each his own, and it's kind of the beauty of boating nowadays. There's so many different manufacturers and there's so many different models, so you could typically always find the boat that suits you and your family or your wife best. What works for him or her probably doesn't work for you, vice versa. Don't ever talk boats with somebody that doesn't have the same boat as you, because it's like politics. But hybrid bay boats are perfect for the guy that's just getting into boating. He doesn't know if he likes inshore fishing, offshore fishing, sandbar. He may even figure out that he doesn't even like boats in the first place. And then also it's perfect for a guy that maybe wants to downsize from a center console, or maybe move up a little bit from, say, a true bay boat or a flats boat. Anyway, I want to get into this boat, why me, my fiance, my family, we choose to run this boat over any other boat. So first things first, this boat is relatively inexpensive to run for its class. Also, it's very simple. As you can see, we went with no T-top. The reason why we did that is because when we're at the sandbar, we don't spend any time inside of the boat. And also when we fish, we either fish early mornings or late afternoons. So the sun is typically outside of the coverage of the T-top. It's also easier to clean, easier to dry, less to maintain. And then lastly, we also have a 30-foot contender. So when we do want to go offshore on those sloppy days or do a Bahamas crossing, we have the capability to do that comfortably. The reason why we didn't choose a hybrid bay boat is just because it was way too close to the center console. Plus, in the past, I've always had skiffs, I've had flats boats, and I still wanted something that, you know, had true inshore capabilities, but at the same time, I could take it offshore on a calm day, eliminating the workload from the big center console. So let's start walking through the boat. I'll give you some of the key features and kind of just elaborate on why this is the perfect boat for me, my fiance, and my family. So on the Transom, we have the 250 Show. It's Yamaha's high performance motor. It's a V6 4-stroke. It's actually the same block as the 300, but for the year and a half that I've had this motor, I have nothing but great things to say about it. Moving along, I went with the 8-foot power pole blades. The 10-footers are a little too high for me. I fished on boats that have had them, and it's a little difficult for me to maneuver around the transom. So the 8-footers were just absolutely perfect. Nothing but great things to say about power pole. They have exceptional customer service, great people, extremely durable product. And you know, there's no such thing as brakes on a boat, and this is the closest thing to it. And I gotta tell you, there's nothing nicer when you get on top of a school of fish, a school of bait, or you're at the sandbar and the current's ripping a little harder than you thought, and just being able to just put these things down and just stop. It's an exceptional product, and I'll probably never own another inshore boat without them. So you probably can't see it, but this boat has what's called a step that's below the water line. Basically what it is it's an indentation in the bottom of the hull. And the reason why they do that is because it gives the boat less wet surface. And when you have less wet surface, that reduces the drag. And basically, if you have less drag, you have better fuel economy and you have better speed. And that's something that's important to us because we want to get places fast, but at the same time, we don't want to burn a bunch of fuel while we're getting there. So may not seem like there's a lot going on back here, but there's definitely a couple key features I'd like to touch on. First things first, these hatches, they have extremely deep gutters. I've had boats in the past where, you know, I've always had to worry about things getting wet, and then once they get wet, they start to smell, they get nasty. But with these deep gutters, it channels all the water nicely into the drains, so you never have to worry about anything in here getting wet. This makes a great release well, makes a great live well. I've used it as a fish box. And, you know, elaborating off the whole dryness factor, we do a lot of trips from Isla Mirada to Key West in this boat, and we put luggage back here and it stays dry without a problem. So right here we have the main center live well exactly where it should be. I believe all live wells should be in the middle of the boat. Reason why is because when you have them on the sides, you got to work your trim tabs. And when you're working your trim tabs, you know, you cut into fuel economy and you also cut into speed. So the fact that Pathfinder put their main live well in the center is just awesome. Like I said, very, very important to me. Right behind the center live well is the bilge. Not as big as it could be, but hey, I mean, it works. You have all access to your pumps, your bilge pumps, all your wiring, which is labeled and color coded. So that's really nice. I spend a lot more time in there than I'd like to, but hey, it is what it is. Over here, we have the mirroring hatch to this one over here. That's a release well, live well, fish box, dry storage, whatever you want to call it. I use this one strictly as dry storage. This is where I typically put all my tackle and just things I want to get to really, really quickly, but at the same time, I kind of want out of the way. I also have my power pull pumps there away from any type of salt water. Like I said, those things are important to me, so I want to make sure they're always working. A little further back, there's 4 rod holders, 2 of them degreed a little further out, 2 of them going straight back. Right where they should be, out of the way, perfect for trolling, or if you want to drift live baits for tarpon around the bridges, or you're just waiting on a bite. So I really, really like where they put those. We also have the pop-up cleats here. I feel like all boats nowadays should have pop-up cleats. They just look great, nice and flush. Nothing for anything to get caught on, no fly line or tearing off your pants when you're getting in the water at the sandbar. Leaning post is very standard, not really too much going on here. You see this on a lot of fishing boats, and the reason why is because it works so well. You have storage underneath here. This flips forward, and you have 5 rod holders across the back, so it makes a nice rocket launcher. When you're using the backrest, you only have 3, but you also have cup holders, which just make for great short-term storage where you want to just have some hooks readily accessible or some lures or weights. So that's great. In the future, I would like to change it out maybe for something a little more comfortable. But as of right now, you know, it's working. I'm not really complaining. It does really, really well. You also have this little flip down footrest. It's a really, really nice touch when you want to get a little more comfortable. On the console, steering wheel's nice and offset, so that way you and whoever's sitting next to you has plenty of room. Throttle's right where it needs to be. Switch panel's black, the nice silver accent that matches the trim tab switches, which is a really nice touch. Cup holders on either side. You can never have enough cup holders on a boat. Gauge is tucked in this kind of like indented area here. I installed a JL head unit right next to it that just fits perfectly. So that gave me the ability to mount the 7612 right in the middle of this big open area here. Some people do it offset where they put their head units beside it, maybe a VHF, but by going with that smaller head unit, that made for a perfect place to center mount that GPS. I went as big as possible. Reason why, because I don't like getting up real close to try to see where I'm going. But moving further up, we have the windshield. Wasn't really too fond of this when I first got the boat, but after having it and using it for 1.5 years, it's really nice to be able to have a conversation with somebody beside you without having to hear wind noise in your ears and screaming at each other. So that's a nice touch. Nice little grab handle here for when things get sloppy. It's also great to mount GoPros and stuff like that. I'm always filming, so that was a pretty cool touch. It's a little flip down feature in here where you have kind of like minimal storage, which works really, really well for stuff you want to get to real quick. You also have both of your battery switches in there for your main and your trolling motor. It's also where all the breakers are at. On the side of the console, 4 vertical rod holders on either side, totaling to 8. So when you're driving and you want to pull up on a spot real quick, it's just real easy to just pick up a rod and start fishing. So I really like that. As far as the stereo system, went a little above and beyond. We like loud music and we like it to sound good. We do a lot of cruising around down here in the Keys. So we went with 2 10s, 2 7.7s, and then 4 8.8s in the cockpit. And all of that's run to 1600 watts in total. So in the front of the console here, there is a big, massive door that opens up to just give you a tremendous amount of access inside of this console. And if you remove the cooler, this whole bottom door opens up the same exact way as this one. I do all my maintenance myself, so this is tremendous. It's very easy for me to get in there and work. It's so big, I remember one time we went down to a wedding in Key West on this boat, and I hung my entire tux inside of there. Further down in the console, I have 1 house battery, and then I have 3 other batteries for the 36 volt Minn Kota. I was a little skeptical at first about running 1 house battery with the 1600 watt stereo, but till this day I've never had an issue with it. I guess the 250 shows just have really good alternators on them. As far as running a 36 volt trolling motor, I was very skeptical about running an additional battery because I saw that guys were running a 24 volt on this boat. But the truth is once you get into heavy current, the 24 is just not enough. So if you're going to ever set up a trolling motor on this boat, I highly, highly suggest that you go with the 36 and nothing more. Moving towards the front of the boat here, we got rod lockers, and I gotta tell you, I absolutely love these things. Reason why is because convenience is a huge factor for me. And the more that I can simplify, the better. At the end of the day, rather than bringing my rods back up to the garage or to a hotel room, I can just rinse them, stick them right back in here, lock them up, and just completely forget about them. Another thing too, is whenever I'm throwing the cast net, I like my deck to be completely free of anything that it can possibly catch on. So typically before I throw, I stow my rods away. Once I catch my bait, and that's when I bring them right back out to fish. Moving towards the middle here, I'm gonna give you guys a different angle because you can't see it from there. But here's a nice deep hatch that I don't really use too much just because it's in such an awkward position, but it's nice and deep, almost goes to the floor. I put safety stuff in there and like other things that I don't really need to get to too often, but just another great way that Pathfinder is utilizing space. Right in front of that, we have this storage hatch. Very large. You have access to the rod lockers on either side just in case something gets stuffed up inside of there that you need to grab a little more conveniently. I don't really use this too much just because I try to keep all my weight towards the back and the center of the boat. Gives me more speed, better fuel economy, better performance overall. But if I'm doing an offshore trip and I do want a little better ride, I will store some things up here just to distribute the weight towards the front of the boat a little more. Up here, we have an anchor locker. I don't really use an anchor on this boat too much just because I'm typically always using the power poles, but having the option is definitely nice. I have 2 plugs. I have a 36 volt and then I have a 12 volt that goes to the switch panel. The reason why I have that 12 volts is because I have a light bar that I mount on this trolling motor puck here. There's a cutout here, so that way if you are using an anchor, you can tie it off to the cleat and then throw the excess rope inside of the hatch here. I don't have the trolling motor on the boat right now, but I use a Minn Kota auto deploy and auto stow trolling motor. Like I said, convenience is huge to me, and the more I can simplify something, the better it is for me. One last thing I forgot to mention is you have this cooler seat right here. It's got a gel coat finish, so it matches the rest of the boat. Also has a really nice cushion, so it makes a nice seat on a calm day. You also have horizontal undergunnel rod storage. Last but not least, every hatch in this boat is lit. So early morning or late night, you should never have a problem finding anything inside of this boat. Also has undergunnel lights where it lights up the entire cockpit, so you never have to worry about tripping over anything. But ultimately, there's a lot of nice touches to this boat and a lot of other things that I could talk about for hours. But I just wanted to show you guys a couple key features to help you understand why we enjoy using this boat so much. But if you guys enjoyed the video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe. We really appreciate you guys watching. Thanks so much.